Putin's war in Ukraine grinds on. This is day of 57. Soldiers there continue gruesome attacks against Ukrainian civilians, on children. Cities leveled. Reports of Russian soldiers brutally raping women there. It's an enormous cost. And it's not only to the Ukrainian people, but also to many in Russia who are not necessarily in any way supportive of Putin's aggression, who must deal with these global sanctions. And despite facing internal oppression at home, prison, or worse, we are also seeing these reports of people bravely protesting the war inside Russia. Indeed, a rough count is that there have been over 15,000 arrests. There may be many, many more people who oppose the war and are not out in public risking everything. And then there's the now infamous Russian television employee who interrupted that live broadcast just to protest what she called Putin's war propaganda. Putin is running a country where holding even a blank piece of paper, which is seen as a symbol of war protest right now, can get you arrested. It is beyond Orwellian. It's a risk that people have taken for years, though, to stand up and warn about Putin's autocratic regime, even before things got as visibly bad abroad as they have. One group that's been at the forefront of this and brings us to something special tonight is a punk rock performance collective. They go by the name Pussy Riot. Founded in 2011, the group's created songs and staged these guerrilla gigs throughout Russia, opposing Putin and also advancing a whole range of issues that aren't just anti-Putin, but are for the Russian people, like universal rights, including LGBTQ rights. The group also gained more global notice when 5 members did a performance inside Russia's National Cathedral. That led to arrests and prison time. There was also a song and a video called Make America Great Again, but it mocked Donald Trump and this sort of Putin-Trump axis in a kind of goofball but scary dystopian universe. This is a group with, I can say, brave members who have long stood up to Putin in all sorts of ways, both protest, physical, and cultural, while sharing their work and music.
The women of Pussy Riot spent hours waiting in their glass box for the judge to start reading her verdict.
The young women have become the poster girls of Russian dissent.
We want the government to leave power because we consider it illegitimate.
German doctors tonight say Pyotr Versilov, a Putin critic and the most prominent male member of the protest group Pussy Riot, was most likely poisoned.
Moscow is not such a beautiful place as our government wants to show it.
They can try to silence one of us, but they cannot silence every one of us.
For a special edition of Fallback here on The Beat, I'm joined now by Nadya Tolokonnikova, a founding member of that Russian protest punk band Pussy Riot. She served prison time in Siberia for some of her work, cultural, political, and otherwise, speaking out against Putin. And back with us is Bill Kristol. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Nadya, starting with you straightforwardly, why was it important for you to stand up to what you view as this type of repression in the past? And were you trying to warn the world about Putin?
Any type of concentration of power brings a lot of negative consequences. What we see today is the result of complacency of a lot of people inside and outside of Russia. For example, in 2014, it was obvious that Putin started war in Ukraine, and we did ask the global community to take it more seriously. And I feel like partly what's happening today is the result of the global community treating it too lightly. So basically, when the power is concentrated in the hands of just one person, it's becoming incredibly dangerous because, at some point they might just lose their mind and invade neighboring country, which what just happened.
Yeah, you're talking about concentrated power, and Putin, as we've charted, has grown that power from when he first came in as kind of an installed or quasi-incumbent for an election. Bill, you've given a lot of thought to democracy around the world. What do you see here as important in culture as Putin tries to decimate not only the Ukrainian people, but their culture, and yet the story of the Russian people is complicated. It's not monolithic by any means.
I mean, I so admire the people who've taken real risks and paid a real price, obviously, to be dissidents and a regime like Putin's. When I came to Washington first, I was, one of the reasons that I got into politics was I so admired Sakharov and Sharansky and others in the 70s and 80s, and thought we could do our bit here to help. And I hope we're doing as much as we can. And I'm curious what Nadya thinks of this. I mean, are we doing as much as we can to get information into Russia? Do they have access to true information, or has Putin succeeded in shutting it down? That's something the U.S. government can do some of, but it's also something I've worked with a couple of people who try to use in the private sector, make end runs around Putin's censorship of the internet and so forth. We do need to get the truth help get the truth to the Russian people.
Nadya, how about that in the free flow of information in Russia as Putin has gone after social media, et cetera?
It's challenging. You gotta use VPN. You can use Tor project to access Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We still have Telegram. All the media outlets who cover the war, they blocked on the territory of Russia. We're creating mirrors. I'm sitting right here in this shirt of Mediazona, which is a media outlet that we created in 2014, and became quickly one of the most important independent voices in modern Russia. We grew the whole generation of young Russians who stand against the regime. Well, the regime understands this well as well, and that's why they blocked us. But we still work. A lot of journalists had to flee to save their lives and lives of their families. But we still work, and I guess until we if you breathe, we're going to deliver real news to Russian people.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a really tricky debate that's really raging in the West, because the sanctions are designed to go after Putin and the Russian government, but they affect the Russian people. There's long-running debates about sanctions in the world. Then there's people going further. I want to read from something. This is from a more conservative outlet in the United States. But people don't always admit this, but it happens in wars. We know that. And it's very concerning. But somebody says, I'm reading here from a Wall Street Journal letter, calling for the boycott of Russian artists, dancers, musicians. They should go back to Russia hanging their heads. We want to make it uncomfortable for the Russian people, who need to recognize their rogue state will not be accepted by the West in any way. What is your reaction to people who confuse or link the diverse entire Russian population or its cultural offerings with this authoritarian leader? I wanted to give you here on the American airwaves a chance to respond.
I think you should be selective. If a person supported continuously Kremlin, Putin, the war in Ukraine, then definitely they should not be able to enter other countries. Well, there are a lot of Russians who do not support Putin, and they're oppressed, seriously oppressed. They're risking their lives every day to oppose this lack of freedom that we have. And I think you should help those Russians, because if you are going to turn against them, well, some of them might go back to Russia and actually join Putin, because it's going to be the only one way for them if they're going to be rejected by the whole world. So I don't really think, if your ultimate goal is to fight Putin, I think you should show support to people who do not support him.
Bill, I've got 40 seconds. There's nothing new about anti-Russian sentiment in America, or all kinds of bigotry for that matter. War supercharges it. Your thoughts?
Well, I very much agree. I think we need to support decent Russians and the Russian people, and ultimately make clear, I wrote a piece on this right before the war, this is Putin's war. Now, unfortunately, he controls Russia, and a lot of people are going along with it. He controls the sources of information, so he probably has a lot of temporary support. But we need to make clear, this is Putin's war, and Putin is what has to be dealt with. We have no quarrel with the Russian people. We want Russia to be a free and successful country.
Yeah. Well, this is a kind of a wartime fallback. It's a segment where we look at culture, but culture is part of how we learn about these issues, including these major problems with a lot of risk and suffering out there. I want to thank Nadya Tolokonnikova from Pussy Riot for joining us, for your work, and Bill Kristol. Thanks to both of you.